Hey guys. Hope you guys are having a nice day, evening, morning. GM. Hey, Hefe.
GM, how are you this morning?
Doing a little bit under the weather, but making it.
We're
Plus,
all gonna make
threw out
it.
my back playing tag yesterday.
That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I was watching the videos. Pretty epic.
I mean, it's a testament to what we can do in the Gotchiverse, right? It's like we had so many Gotchis chasing you, and everything was keeping up too with all that. So
Yeah, we've come a long way.
I'm looking forward to the next couple weeks because I feel like we're gonna see that liveliness. Like we'll see the Gotchiverse come alive in the next couple weeks. I think.
Yeah, totally. It's gonna be definitely an event to watch and very, very exciting.
So I got this thing going. I'm streaming this to YouTube and Twitter, and it's also recording. And I think Zombie Shepherd is also recording it or streaming it. So we
Great.
got some coverage.
Very cool. So anyone else who is anyone going to be leading this today? Feel free to raise your hand. Come on up.
Yeah, I know Hardcore put together some Miro boards, so that's what I got open right now. I don't know, like, is he going to be joining us here today? But he has some interesting stuff on the boards we could probably go through. I thought maybe he might be coming to this meeting as well.
Let's bring up Crypto Godfather. Hey, Crypto Godfather, how are you?
Good morning.
I just tried to log into the Miro board, but I think it requires some access. Not sure which one.
Okay, I can send you a link here. Maybe that might work.
Yeah, we need I guess the public one.
I got the link up there.
Okay.
Sorry,
we're gonna.
I put in weekly hangouts. My bad. Let me put this in here. There we go.
There it is. Nice. Cool. All right. So this is our. Do we have is this the current agenda? It says May. Looks like we're two weeks old here.
GM.
GM.
Let's see here. Well, he started on a new one next over to this. Let's see. Yeah, this was last week's. Last week we talked about bubble ups. We talked about the spillage, the levels. So this has been covered here. I see he started on a new one. And then we also have the eye traits discussion. I know last week you were saying that's something you didn't want to touch. Is that still something that's not on the table for this week? Or do you want to get into the eye traits discussion for today as well?
Let's see. I'm following Hardcore here, trying to keep up with him. Where is he? Yeah. I mean, I think we probably have some time to go through the eyes and see what the new thoughts are.
Okay, I see the most recent Miro board. He's put it down there. It's just below the first one there. And so, okay. So I guess we could start with I'm just trying to follow this board here.
Yeah, cool. So each week we have a new board. Is that how this is going to work?
Yeah. Yeah, I already said I'm going to help him kind of organize some of it too, but he's been doing this all on his own. Okay. So I'm going to start at the top right there, where it says question for the DAO to ponder ourselves. What does successful use of this land look like? Who should control it? Do we have interest and bandwidth for a DAO Square task force? I guess this might be like a future discussion. Generative art based on DAO Tag Cloud. I'm going to try and find what's the most relevant to what we were looking at last week. Okay.
Yeah, real quick, I'll give an update on the snapshot situation. So we submitted our PR to them, and I believe they merged it. But looks like there's still some issues with voting power not being correct for some people, or in some situations, the voting power looks correct, and then you submit the vote, and then it looks different, which is very strange. I've never seen that happen on Snapshot before. So we are in talks and communicating with their team about what the issue is. There is one potential possibility I've been thinking. The query that we have to perform to calculate voting power is pretty long. It's pretty intense, especially for like the vault, because they have so many open lendings at a time sometimes. So that might be one area. I'm not sure. We haven't really gotten any confirmation from them about what the issue is there.
Okay. So it's like a wait and see kind of situation.
Yeah. So I
So I
mean,
got some.
any proposals that are like any sig props, I think during this time, we can keep putting out sig props because they're probably going to be pretty close to reaching quorum anyway. So if they barely meet it or just miss it, I think it's probably fine to count them because we are missing a lot of voting power.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Hopefully, that's something they can sort out pretty soon. As we
Yeah.
start going into the Gotchiverse, I'm sure there's going to be more proposals that get generated for sure.
Yeah.
So I got some clarification on what are the items for discussion this week. We have level 9. I guess that's in regards to the highest level for installations. That was brought up by Notorious BTC. I don't have more context than that, but if is Notorious BTC in the? Yeah, I mean, if you want to elaborate on that, get some more context on that. And then Thunderfish with wearable sets. I guess there was some discussion around wearable set modifications and maybe fixing the Link Marine set. There was an issue with that. Hey, Notorious BTC. Good morning.
Hey man, what's up?
And
Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah.
yep.
Great. Yeah, so the level 9 situation, it's a bit deeper than that. It goes back to there's a long running forum thread now about the installation costs. And there's been a lot of debate and back and forth across the community and with the devs about the cost of installations as well as the rate of yield. So Mikey J and I put together a proposal with the DAO Treasury Force and submitted to do like a deep dive on this and see if we can't first, from like a logical, holistic standpoint, build some ideas on how the game should look, and then flow it into like numerical models. So my job was to go into the logical flow and take a look at things holistically, like with words and what should feel right. And so I shared that document late last night on the forum. I don't know if everyone or anyone had a chance to read it. It's quite lengthy, as it encompasses, to the best of my ability, everything that had been discussed, all the different mechanics we can look at that impact not only the cost of the installation, but also the rate of yield, as well as different mechanics and little levers we can play with to achieve different results. And in my exploration, I created 3 different archetypes of like potential players. One was the small farmer, and this is a player that has, a small capital, is looking to build and grow his land organically. And then you have like the degen speculator, and he starts with a lot of upfront capital and is looking to maximize his yield as quickly as possible. And then there's like the empire builder, who has more of a long-term vision and is looking to grow his empire over time. And what I realized in this journey is the major mechanic for game balance is to strive for something where the degen speculator, who builds everything as fast as possible, he's looking to offset that cost. Or, sorry, let me back up. The way I looked at this, I'll share this image here that I made a little chart of in the chat real fast to give an idea of where I'm going with this, with game balance. And when I look at the parcel, the way I look at it as I'm building my land, I'm borrowing against my land's resources to build things now in order to get those resources out later. So there's like a net yield harvested when you look at what you build, right? So if you build something that's all level 9, maxed out completely, that's going to cost far more resources than if you build something with just level 1s, right? So what I'm looking at from a logical standpoint is where that net yield should fall. Like if you take the cumulative number of all the parcels, but not all the parcels, all the installations, the harvester, the maker, the reservoir, what should that cost be with respect to the actual total resource on the land? And then on the other end of the extreme, the level 1 build out, that should have the maximum amount of yield, but the rate of extraction is lower. So you start to play with a few different ideas, in that the level 9 extractor, the degen speculator, he is assuming Alchemica is going to be more expensive in the beginning. So he wants to get all of it out of his land as quickly as possible, even though his net yield quantity-wise is lower. And then on the other end, the slow builder is going to get more yield quantity-wise, on the assumption that Alchemica price is going to be more stable. So what I started to see is, if we can have a balance where both extremes are viable, then there's a number of different builds you can have in between for all the different play styles. And that's really the gist of what I came to the conclusion of, in the whole exploration. So does that make sense? Are there any questions on that bit?
I'm looking at your original post there. Is that the one that says something ain't right with installation upgrades?
Yes. Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
really, really long thread at this point.
Okay, but yeah, it is interesting though. I'm just looking at some of the bullet points you put out there. Actually, it does bring up some interesting points. Maybe I'll actually just grab those and I'll post them in the. We can maybe discuss some of these.
Yeah, are you looking at the document itself, the TLDR, or are you in the forum thread?
I'm in the forum. I'm looking at something ain't right with installation upgrades. The DAO post
Okay.
in the forum. Yeah. Um,
So
so these are,
in world, like the strategy should be, do you build faster, more expensive, but get less yield quantity wise, on the assumption that you'll be able to sell your alchemica for a higher price in the beginning, or do you build more slowly?
Yeah, that's very similar to our archetype. They're basically the same archetype of the glitter maxi. The glitter maxi was basically a person who's trying to maximize their LP stake and then maximize their glitter. But it ends up being pretty much the same ideas. In any type of farming game, the kind of the assumption is that the farm tokens will probably go down. Now that might not be true. We might be able to maintain, or possibly even they could go up over time. But a lot of farmers will assume that the tokens are going to go down, so they're going to try to maximize their yield up front by putting as many resources as possible up at the beginning. So that's originally why we had the build that we currently do have, which was where the upper tier levels were quite expensive, and it wasn't exactly optimal to get a level 9.
And that makes sense. I understand the logic behind everything you did a lot more when I went into this myself.
But I mean, what I liked about your probing was there is that. So we can look at it from the economic perspective, but from the gamer perspective, there's this sense of completion that you feel like it's fun to be able to get a level 9, and so it should be accessible. And even if maybe you don't want to be a degen speculator, you want to be like the empire builder like you have out, it should still make sense for that type of archetype as well, or for just a casual player that has a spacious parcel. It'd be also great if they could get at least one level 9 of an altar or even a harvester.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think there's like that level of finesse, and ideally we have a setup where I guess my opinion would be like the full level 9 build would not be like the only option that we strive for, because then there's less strategy, right? So it's almost like the full degen mode is all level 9, but don't quite get that high quantity of yield, because as you say, the farm tokens tend to go down over time, versus maybe building like just 10 to 20 to 30% of the land up to L9 and have larger quantity of yield over time, but it's not as fast up front. Yeah, so that's an agreement there. So with the document, I did like a deep dive. It is quite lengthy. It's like 22 pages, I believe. Hats off to you if you read and kept up with me through the whole way through. There's a few things that I thought would be worth discussing, and that's the maker first. There's been introduced in chapter 4 build caps based on parcel size, which is cool. But I think we can add in another gameplay mechanic, which is the maker, and have the maker influence the maximum quantity build. And that's something we have going to be modeled with the numbers coming out early next week. Mikey J's making some really badass codes to run some simulations. And I don't know what the community feels, but when you look at the ROI on a humble, due to the fact that the altar price is the same across all 3 parcels, the sunk cost for a humble is much higher ratio wise than spacious. So in a way they get wrecked. So I don't know if only allowing 4 harvesters on a humble is beneficial for the small player and the ROI of a humble parcel. I don't know how everyone else feels about that though. Just something that came up to me this morning. So I realized I miscalculated in my document. I assumed they could build 16. I'd missed that detail.
Yeah, I mean, 4 on a humble implies, I guess, you can just harvest one type of each alchemica per, because you need you need one different type of harvester for each type of alchemica that you're pulling out there, if you want to, completely drain the parcel. But maybe my opinion is not as well informed, but to me, the value proposition of a humble is a little bit different than a spacious or a reasonable. Whereas the humble, I hope the prices stay reasonable, where it's an entry point for new players who want to get some of the utility, like the functionality of land, like maybe some of the other benefits such as teleporting, or being able to build installations on it, and maybe not just the harvesting aspect for humbles only specifically.
If that makes sense. And I guess we don't have a full picture painted yet of what all can be built on a land, for sure. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yes, Slick introduced another archetype, which I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know if he can speak or wants to share about that on the call.
Yeah, I see he's mentioned the traveling merchant. That's very interesting.
It'll be interesting. Like, I like how you're looking at this as from the point of archetypes, because with this being not just a financial, economic thing, there's actually a game underpinning all of this, and everybody's going to have their different playing styles, and so like that is a really important consideration, taking into account these things, that not every player is going to approach this the same way, and how can we make sure that all players are getting a satisfactory experience out of whatever playing style they choose, and that there's no optimal playing style that maybe everybody will want to gravitate to. Maybe there's trade-offs for each.
Absolutely. And I think that's, if we can really nail that, we'll have a really rewarding gameplay experience where, you can go all in and push for the max ROI in the very beginning, or a little bit more slowly, organically over time. That would make for a really good game.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
Coder Dan, you had an Coder Dan had an interesting data point on how long it would take to drain. Was it a spacious parcel with all level 1 harvesters? It was a long
Yeah.
time, wasn't it?
Yeah. So with a level 1, I think currently you're earning was it 14 or 15 FUD per day, and you could
it's
build
14.
14, so 120. If we went with 128, which isn't quite accurate, but let's just say 64. So you get 896 a day. There's on average there's going to be about 911,000. So that's about 3 years with that rate. Now what we're thinking is lowering that rate even more to about 5 per day, but we're also lowering the cost of it significantly. But if we did that, it would come up to about 3,000 days. It's going to be a while. So I don't think the optimal play would really be to have level 1s on your. I mean, it's good if you just want passive income. You're not really concerned about how much it's going to be. But you wouldn't really be making back any sort of ROI and for a while. I mean, you'd have an ROI, but it'd be a very small ROI. Which is kind of one of the things that we were thinking about is the time to recoup your investment. And so with the level 1, you'll recoup it with the current model. I think it's about 30 days. So after 30 days, you're profitable, but you're not really earning that much. And that's kind of how we were balancing the level 1 versus the level 9. Level 1 is cheap, and the time to recoup is pretty quick, but you're not really earning that much. But if you do want to earn faster, you want to clean out your parcel faster, that's when you would want to upgrade to the higher levels.
That makes perfect
And so,
sense.
mhm.
And I think the
the
models Mikey J are building out will give us a simulation as to how that will actually what that will actually play out, so people will have a more tangible idea of what's going on here.
Yeah. I think another thing to think about is for a spacious especially, maybe not everyone, like you could have one level 9. Maybe you don't need to upgrade everything to a level 9. You could have a couple level 9s and some lower levels as well. You know, you don't have to go full out level 9 on every harvester that you have. You could maybe have one. But I mean, if you do that, then you have like kind of the sunk cost of the altar. So it kind of makes sense to, if you're gonna go to level 9, it would almost make sense to upgrade everything to level 9 eventually. Notorious, maybe I know you guys have a couple ideas. I read through the TLDR and some of the doc today, but maybe you want to just go through a couple of the apart from the harvester rate changes or price changes, some of the new mechanics you guys were thinking.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I just did a little bulleted list there in the chat. I'll just run through some different ideas. Because the diminishing returns and rate and everything on the harvester has been discussed at length, and I think the numbers are really what we need to see at this point on those. But a few different ideas that came up in this exploration. One that's been discussed already a little bit in the forum is the makers themselves. So for me, I think the maker is like a logistics center, right? And you have like these little robots that help build things. And so for me, it makes sense that they help maintain the harvesters and reservoirs and things of sorts without an actual cost, but they're just like extra hands. So for them to enable you to build more harvesters makes sense. And this gives utility to the harvester or to the makers, which currently are quite pricey and don't have utility beyond just an increased pipeline for building. So I suggested two things that we could do for the maker. The first is to switch the cap quantity on parcels from just that number to the actual maker level. So like the cap quantity on harvester build dictated by maker level. And the second mechanic, which is a more minor mechanic, slightly more nuanced, is potentially giving makers a passive spillover reduction when they're not in use. So I'll explain the cap quantity real quick first. And that is the cap quantity is defined by maker level, and it would be a set number per maker level for each Alchemica type. So I kind of envisioned, rather than it just being a blanket, say 32 cap, it would be like 8888. That way you'd be more incentivized to upgrade your maker. Of course, this is just me talking. This is not numbers or anything. This is just kind of my brain flowing on this one. So you can see here, I had some different ideas. I'll share this with you on how that might play out. Taking a quick screenshot here. So Quincy, the idea, you say we're talking about makers, are you taking into account the cost of a maker for a humble? The way I sort of see the parcel build outs going is a humble wouldn't really have use for a maker. There's not really much space nor utility to have it. That's just my opinion. The reasonable parcel would have yes or no need for maker. It's like more of a preference, and the spacious would absolutely need a maker, is how I envisioned it playing out based on what I've created here. So that just a different way of scaling. So you see, like I said, it no maker would be 8 harvesters per Alchemica type as a stock across all parcels. And then level 1, if you look at end weighted previous growth +1, like level 1 would be 9, and then 11, 14, 17, 22, and so on. That's just an idea I had on how to scale that. Mikey J is doing a bit more calculation on that, though. The reason why I don't see makers working on the humble parcels, I'll share with you here, this chart shows the maker cost as the percent of total supply. So you can see even a level 4 maker on a humble costs more than the entire supply of Alchemica in the ground. It costs 32,500 total FUD, which is 114% of the supply. So it just doesn't really make sense to go beyond that. Okay, Zico, I see there's a typo in my calculation. Thank you for that. It should be 11, 14, 18. So that's something there. The second idea I had was to do a makeover spillover reduction. And the way this would work is when a maker's not in use, the extra bots could capture some additional spillover, which reduces the parcel's total spillover. Not applied to channeling, but more at the harvesting. So basically, if you have, like, say, a level 3 maker, you have 3 bots. So you have a maximum build queue of 4 things. If you're building 2 things at one time, that means you have 2 bots not in use. So you might get like a 2% spillover reduction, like 1 per bot, something like that. Again, these numbers are just for example, they're not calculated on any level. So those are the 2 maker ideas that came through. The spill, oh, let me check the chat real fast. Okay. Yeah, as Mikey J just said, please take the numbers as illustration only. These are just conceptual ideas. And Zico, thank you for the correction on the numbers. I'll take note of that. Then on the spillover rate, we talked about this a bit in the forum. It's my understanding that currently reservoirs dictate the spillover rate. And it had been suggested as a way to empower harvesters and make them more attractive for upgrade, to shift that spillover rate from the reservoir to the harvester. And so that could play out in one of 2 ways. The first way would be like a live action spillover from the harvester. And I don't know if there's technical limitations, so I'm just going to explain the idea, and then if it doesn't work or it's no good, that's to be discussed.
Yeah, we kind of nixed that idea from pretty early on because everything is happening on the contract side, and you can't really be dropping Alchemica from the contract without a transaction happening. So that's why we have the empty reservoir transaction, and that's why we also just turn off the harvesting if it gets filled. Also, it just feels like bad UX to, if someone acts like, if they can't get to their laptop or they lose internet, they're basically just like their money's just flowing out.
That makes sense. Okay, so the live action spillover basically just said, as the Alchemica is pumping, whatever percent spillover is getting sprayed into the air. But technically that's not possible. So then the only option would be, if it's a harvester defined, you would take the average spillover rate across all harvesters. And when you go to collect from the reservoir, it would spill that percent. So for example, if you have 2 harvesters, one's a 90% capture, one's a 70% capture. When you go to collect up the reservoir, the average of the spill is 10 and 30, which is 20%. So 20% would get spilled when you go to collect. And then there's the way it was before, which is the reservoir defined spillover. And that's just like it was before, where the reservoir level defines the spillover rate. And then it was proposed also a double taxed spillover, which is both mechanisms have spillover, and combined you spill even more. I don't think that's a very popular option, but I did put that in there. I thought it might be kind of cool, without actually seeing the numbers, if the harvester defines the spillover and the reservoir actually defines like the spillover radius. So it's broken into 2 different mechanics. I don't know if that's possible from a technical standpoint, but I kind of envision like the harvester as this oil rig spraying things in the air, and the reservoir is like a capturing mechanic. So it has like almost like this magnetism to it as it tries to grab Alchemica. So it would be reducing the radius as the more powerful it gets. Just something I thought of on that. Let's see.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Pretty much how we've thought about it as well. yeah, the harvester I think does have. There could be a scenario where the harvester has um, a spillover rate, and the reservoir only has the spillover radius.
I mean, those two functions would still need to be used, right? It'd just be which installations are associated with them.
Yeah, it's on the technical side. It's actually quite simple to do that. So that's good news.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
right on. All
Cool.
right.
I thought that'd be pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Should we move on to
Um,
the?
One thing that's probably a little bit urgent is if we're going to introduce any changes to glitter. I saw one of the ideas was an ape tax on glitter for long queues, I guess, like something basically the more glitter you spend on one installation, the less powerful it would become. I think that was the idea. Like right now it's one glitter equals one block.
Yes. Yes. That maybe it's worded a bit confusing, but like say like the first 10,000 blocks are 1-to-1 glitter, and then the next 10,000, 100,000 would be like 1.2, and it becomes more expensive if you want to, say you want to insta build like a 45-day build queue.
Mhm.
It would cost a steeper rate than just 1-to-1, something like that.
Oh.
It was
I'm a
just an
little
idea that
worried
came to
about
my
that
mind.
idea. And yeah, I think we actually initially we had an idea to actually make it more powerful, like spending more glitter actually gave you a benefit rather than a tax, because then people would want to spend more glitter. Uh, like there would be almost an incentive to burn more because an incentive to upgrade faster. I'm a little wary of de-incentivizing things.
Makes sense.
You know,
It was just an idea worth having a quick talk about.
Yeah. We are planning to launch glitter quite soon. And so yeah, if there's I think we're probably out of time to make any revisions before it goes live. Obviously, there could be revisions made after by the DAO to how glitter affects things. But yeah, it's just if we need to move. We're probably out of time for an initial distribution, but that will kind of affect the price of glitter. So just one thing
Makes
to
sense.
be aware of.
Yeah, and as Mikey J pointed out, the model's not factoring glitter as it's a whole level of depth. So maybe we just leave it alone for now. It sounds like
Mhm.
the overall community doesn't seem too keen on the idea anyway. So we can just let it go.
Okay.
And then I see Hardcore mentioned the glitter seems pointless with the time scale of the high end stuff. That was something we also looked at, and I think Dan, in your models too, you did increase the build time on things. I think it was somewhat unanimous to increase build time across the board um, on the installations.
Mhm.
So that would actually increase the value of glitter.
Yeah, I'll have to look at the recipe book again. I remember Altar and Gotchi Lodge are quite long, but I think you're referring more to the harvesters and reservoirs.
Yes. Mikey J, I know you're listening, and I don't know if you're able to speak, but he was playing around with some build times too in the models. I don't know if that's something we'll be able to um, toy with once he has that ready to play with here in a few days. But from the logical flow of things, like more of a gameplay, something I was thinking about is like, okay, if my only restraint is build time, how long should it theoretically take me to build my parcel out without glitter? So say I want to max build a reasonable parcel. I have unlimited Alchemica, and my only limiting factor is the time, the build queue time. How long should that take? Versus I'm a small farmer I have no resource and I'm only building off my own land. As I get the resource, I upgrade. Like, what difference in time should that be? Just from a gameplay perspective of what feels right. And that was how I would reverse engineer the build times on a land.
Well, I know playing other games where this tokenized time aspect is actually something, I've spent money on, like, use my credit card to buy more gems or whatever to speed up
Mhm.
build times. And so I think that value of that time is almost more, in my opinion, is going to over time become more valuable than actually even the resources used, because you can get the resources, but you might not necessarily have of the glitter, unless you're staking or you're buying it off the market, to progress your. It's an interesting, tool that people can use, but not necessarily something everybody has to use. Everybody has to use Alchemica resources to build their structures, but the glitter is almost is optional, but it can also become necessary at a certain level, because like nobody's going to want to wait a whole month and miss out on all those yields, when they're upgrading those higher structures, between 7 and 8, 8 and 9. I think that's when the value of glitter is really going to become realized to make those leaps.
It almost starts to become like an arbitrage opportunity where you can arbitrage the price of glitter for the build time to get your yields faster. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. There was just one other consideration, and that was like it's less important, but we should also look at a few of the other costs later, such as the price of walls and the lodges. If my math is right, a spacious parcel needs 94 wall pieces, which costs at current prices when I typed it 12,000 ghost with a build time of 13 years. So that seems a bit steep. I don't know. But anyway, that's not super important to look at today. It's just
Yeah.
something to consider in the future as we dial in these numbers. But yeah, that's it for me. I guess I'll just step down now if we can move on to the next topics. Thanks for the space.
Thank you for
Great work.
thank you for providing such comprehensive data, and really bringing these like issues to light. Grateful to have people like yourself putting those numbers together.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a pleasure. I'm really happy to have been able to come together and see some things that needed attention. And hopefully, with the report done by myself and Mikey J over the next few days, we'll have a really good strategy moving forward and a lot of clarity across the board where the whole community is like, oh, this makes sense. And we're all on board to make some good changes. Oh, thanks, guys.
100%. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed, Hefe. Yeah, it's great to have people really going deep diving in, and also great to have Dan here as well to give the reflection on some of the technical stuff or historic decisions made and why. So, yeah, awesome team effort. Cheers.
Yeah. So the next topic here under old business, we have Thunderfish, who he had brought up something to do with wearable sets, and under that it says wearable set modifications and fixed link marine. I'm assuming that's referring to the link marine set. So if Thunderfish, you're in the audience and you want to come up and maybe give a little bit more context, and we can sort this out. But in the meantime, while we wait for that, I know Jared has posted some questions for yourself, Coder Dan, for Pixelcraft. So maybe we can just address those. While is Thunderfish in the audience? I know I saw him up here earlier on stage. Yeah. Well, here are the questions. So Jared asks, can we get an updated release schedule for new functionality post May 18th? So I
Yeah, I
think
mean, we're not gonna have a calendar, like a day by day of when a new release will come. First of all, there's gonna be a lot of optimizations that we need to do just for the May 18th one. as far as being able to support a lot of players and if there's any UI tweaks that we need to make. So the first priority will be on making sure that everything is going smooth for the 18th and the full Citadel. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of issues that we'll be working through. UX issues, bot issues, all sorts of stuff. So once we're through the majority of that, at the same time on the another thread, we'll have the other team members will be working on the Harvester Reservoir release, and we do have an internal kind of schedule with the order of operations that we're planning to release in, but we can't give like a firm date on 1 month or 2 weeks or whatever. So until the 18th, and about 1 week into it, we should have a good understanding of what the issues are going to be and how quickly we can get through them. But we'll try to get that as soon as possible. We want to definitely get an updated roadmap for the Gotchiverse to you guys, so everyone has expectations. But first, just we need to look at all the different technical issues that we're going to have with the 18th and make sure that we're able to handle all of those first before moving on to new content.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. And then I have a second question also from Jared. What do we do with the core prop for channeling timer? So I guess he's
That's gonna
talking in
be
regards to the sig prop or core
yeah.
prop issue that we're having.
I believe we've already implemented the channeling timer. So if we want to do a core prop, we can. I think we have it written up. It's just this issue with snapshot right now is kind of causing a little bit of chaos in the DAO. So we can do it. I feel like there might be people that are they might not have voting power, or there might be some issue. So since there are people that are potentially unable to vote, I don't know if it's a great idea to do a full core prop, but we are planning to implement the channeling timer anyway.
Okay, great. Yeah, those are the two questions from Jared. And so Thunderfish has also mentioned he stepped out earlier in the meeting, but if we're still going when he's back, he's gonna step up and he's gonna address the wearable topic. And so we can maybe, if he's not back, we can maybe stand by on that. And that takes care of old business anyway. Aside from Thunderfish. So for things that we could address for the rest of the time we have here, we could readdress that I topic that we'd brought up last week, but I know we didn't really want to get into that. Is that something we could discuss this week for I traits? I think Hardcore put something together for that too as well, with these two different mechanics for eye traits, for eye shape and eye color. And so maybe we can kind of gather some ideas around that, what people think. If you can see here, I'll post if you guys aren't looking at the Miro board, I can put that in there so you can see it. Okay. So that's the Miro board there. And so it's how to map the eye traits, right? Because we figured out the rest of the traits, the four main playable traits. And now what's left to finalize, I guess, is the eye traits. And Coder Dan, are you able to see the Miro board there for it says golden eyes, and then eye color is dye color.
Let me see here. Is this on the latest board?
Yeah, it's kind of off to the right actually. Like if you go down like a little bit up to last week's and off to the right,
I'm just gonna
you'll
click on
see.
someone here. Let's see. Click on hardcore. I don't. There's a way to follow people. Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So Hardcore put this together for eyes, and maybe we can get your take on it, and then get some opinions from the audience. If you guys have something you want to add to this, to this discussion around eye traits, definitely come up and share your opinion with us. So we have eye shape that maps to as a crafting fee modifier, and alternatively, on the other end of it, the eye color score maps to emote access rate. So they're tying this into crafting. So it'd be eye utility for crafting. And then alternatively, there's been some talk about laser eyes and possibly using eye color as actually a dye color, which I thought I thought that was a more interesting proposition for eye color over the emotes. And it would play a unique role with what we were talking about yesterday during the hangout, where I was wondering if we're going to see some visual like variations and structures as we move forward, um, with limited edition items and whatnot. And I feel like a really rare eye colors could also provide like a unique aesthetic appeal to certain items that were allowed to change the color on based on these dyes that you'd be able to produce. I guess the questions would be, like, is this something people would want, first of all? And then also the mechanics of how the dyes would actually work, right? Like there'd have to be a little economy essentially around these and how to make that, sustainable, I guess.
So I mean, the eye color. I'll admit, when I'm walking in the Gotchiverse, I see a Gotchi with like the green eyes. It's really cool to see, especially if like a naked Gotchi and you can just see their eyes. They got these like really cool green looking eyes. I dig that. So, um, anything we can do to keep it kind of aesthetic will probably actually end up helping preserve the value of the eyes over giving them like any sort of marginal utility. It just seems like they're already very aesthetic based. I mean, they have their BRS bonus, but the reason people are collecting them is because of their aesthetic, right? So if you give them, I mean, maybe it seems like the emotes, I'd have to think about what you mean with that. Like, do you mean like the emotes that we have, the very primitive emotes that we have right now? Like you would unlock different emotes with different eyes?
Yeah. Yeah, here it says the rate at which a gacha can access the emote pool is determined by the eye color score. It's talking about how, for example, emotes could be released on a 6-month cycle, um, and how different gachis would get access to the different emotes that get released based on their rarity. And so, like, let's say you have some godlike eyes. Well, what you'd consider, like a double myth eyes, or like a rare eye color. Maybe you might have a different emote for those rare. Maybe all the rare eye colors have like one kind of emote. Maybe all the mythical
Right.
eye colors have a different kind of emote. And maybe this would just be one extra additional emote in addition to whatever is already available. Like you have are there 4 right now? I think there's 4, maybe. Yeah. I don't know the exact amount of emotes because I haven't discovered them all either. So there's like 3 that I know of really well. I thought there was 4 or 5, but maybe there's a 6th one, and that's associated to your eye rarity.
Yeah. I think there's a couple aesthetic things we could do. I'm I'm a little not quite sold on like adding a bunch of new emotes just for the eyes. But what could be interesting maybe is the emotes. Right now we have very, very primitive emotes. We're definitely gonna have more cooler stuff later. But maybe the background of the emote could be the eye color. Like every time you emote, you could see just from the emote color what the eye color of the gachi is. That would be like one way to make it very, very obvious. Like if you have mythical pink eyes, your emote's going to show up as pink and everyone would know. And another thing you could maybe do would be the name color of the gachi could be the eye color. That would be like another easy change, but it would be very, very obvious.
I
Um,
like that aspect you mentioned of making the aesthetic appeal like more enhanced. Because my thing I have right now with the current way the eye color is set up is when we're playing in the Gotchiverse, you may not necessarily notice that
mhm.
double mythi Gotchi because you're zoomed out all the way trying to look for Alchemica, and so like it is a flex, but like I don't think a lot of people would notice it in certain scenarios. So maybe making that a little bit more obvious because that is the real value of the eye colors right now, right? Is people are paying for the exclusivity. There's like that collector value to it, and I agree with that, but I also think it's just not that obvious at the moment when you're like in the actual game. And so maybe another way could be in the chats. I don't know if you guys could enable the same eye color for the chat. So as you're typing, if you have mythical eye color, you're gonna know that person without even looking at their gotchi. You're gonna know they have a mythize because their text when they're typing is gonna be
Yep.
that double mythize color, right?
Yeah,
That could add some extra value.
yeah, we were thinking for the text, we could also kind of rely on the Discord color as well, because like if you've linked your Discord, we're already getting which roles you have, and so we could potentially also um do some things with the chat and change the text color and stuff. But if you have mythical eyes, maybe those would override that kind of stuff. Like if you have the pink eyes, your text could show up as pink, or at least your name would show up as pink. And yeah, I think Spirit Force also could be pretty interesting. Right now, the Spirit Force is based on the Spirit Force color, but eye color would also make a lot of sense for the aura as well.
I feel like maybe the spirit force is not being utilized as much as it could be because these I'm surprised we don't have a guild of like chain link gotchis or like a group of die gotchis, but I feel like that's going to start to happen just because when these auras combine they actually do create a visual aesthetic, when you have all these orange gotchis grouped together, or like that similarity. I don't know, there's something to that for sure. um and maybe that will play a bigger role. And I guess it is either or, right? It's like either we have the aura dictated by spirit force, or we have the aura dictated by eye color. It wouldn't I don't think it could be both. But it is cool to have it associated with eye color because that goes back to what we were saying before, how we can make this a little bit more obvious, that this is actually a rare gotchi based on the eye color, even when you're zoomed out all the way, and it may not seem obvious.
Yeah, laser eyes are pretty interesting too. I mean, I guess um we have to think about what they would how like would how far would they go out? Would they be an attack, or are they just like, it could be interesting to, if you're like leading some gotchis, you could tell everyone, let's go this way. Like people could watch where your are pointed. They could like follow the direction of them.
Yeah, the laser
So
pointer is really cool. Not like a weapon though. Is that what you're saying? More like a directional, like we're going this way, like to
yeah.
coordinate maybe. Yeah, I really like that. I mean, I'd like to know what other people are open, if they're open to this about maybe not having as much utility for the eyes and maybe having more of the appeal for eye colors to be associated with like an aesthetic, like pure aesthetic appeal, because that's what they are right now. We would just be enhancing it. With the current UI, when you log in to Aavegotchi.com, you're in the bazaar, you can see which gotchis are the rarest, but that's not so obvious when you're actually in the
Yeah.
game. So maybe that's one way we can fix that and implement some more visual like enhancements.
Yeah. Eyes are really just for flexing. Then you got the eye shape as well. So could be like the Batman signal where like it like literally shines the signal onto the ground, Like if you have your Wi-Fi eyes or your eventually we'll have the ghost eyes, right? You could just shine a laser beam of ghost on the ground somewhere. Could be kind of fun.
That would be really cool, and it also again integrate into the laser aspect. So maybe
Yeah.
it's like eyes are associated with laser, and then traits of laser would be color of laser would be mapped to color of eyes, and then shape of laser would be mapped to shape of eyes, something like that. I don't know. Yeah, it is interesting. A lot of those eye shapes would make for great bat signals, that's for sure. And so maybe, just to kind of touch on that initial point that we made about the eye color and, the initial proposal here that's been put out. In general, you guys, I guess, want to stay away from adding like pure any kind of economic value to the eyes because potentially it could hurt the value of
I just
the.
think, yeah, like I think what we've noticed with Aavegotchi and other NFTs is that whenever you start adding like an economic value to something, people just start to focus on that. And so the eyes have kind of always been this, they have beyond the BRS value, which is they're just a trait, so everything has a BRS value. But beyond that, people have really fixated on the aesthetic like coolness of having the green eyes. So I would say I don't know if it's not going to probably increase the value, but if you add a value to them, you say these are going to give you, for example, like 5% higher channeling or something like that, whatever, then the market will probably react negatively to that. People are just going to say, oh, well, they're just for channeling. They don't really do much else. But if you give them like an aesthetic thing that's more for a flex, just for clout, the value of clout is there's no ceiling to it.
I mean, that's so true, right? It's an intangible value. It's not something that's made so obvious, but once there's that scarcity aspect that gets realized that certain eye colors just don't really exist in large numbers, then, the value will naturally accrue, I guess, as the demand for those things. Like the market will value them appropriately, I guess, for whatever level of flex they're at.
Well, that's yeah. The market's not like the market's good at valuing things that have economic value, but for flexes, it's really hard to value. They're almost priceless.
Yeah, it's kind of like I look at the double mythos as like there's like those crypto punks, the hoodies or like the zombies. Like they have no extra. Well, in general, crypto punks don't have utility, but the rarity of those specific punks, they get valued a lot higher just because of those aspects. They may not actually have any extra real value, but looks rare, right?
Mhm.
Except with Aavegotchi, we can confirm it actually is rare because it's a mapping to the traits, which is kind of nice. Um, does anybody else have anything to add on eye traits, eye discussion? Is there something I missed? I'm gonna check the chat right now. But it seems like people are really digging the laser eyes.
Actian says, "What do you think about something that has no price advantage, but varies gameplay, like eyes defining alchemical affinity, i.e., how you interact with different alchemica?" What do you mean by interact? Like, what is it? I've seen that term alchemical affinity, but what exactly are we doing with that?
I wonder if he's referring to there's a comment you made a while ago where we might eventually have some alchemica that's like hardened. It
Mhm.
may not, it's like more congealed. It may not be the easiest to pick up. Maybe you have to like break it or like do some sort of interaction with it to actually extract that alchemica out. I wonder if he's referring to that. Anything, he says, anything to be defined later. It could be speed, attack bonus, or something, farming stuff, magnetism. Okay, so it's like a general, I guess, a general advantage over alchemica collecting. Yeah. Guess we need a little bit more context on that, but it could be, you know, I do like your comment that you made with making eyes, you know, more aesthetic based and just enhancing the clout per se. I'm just looking at some of the other, see if we have any other questions in the chat here. Minimap. OBRS. Okay. There's some other topics that Hardcore put down here that I think are worth just touching on. One of them was we had touched on last week for respecking spirit points. Is that something that's still on the table, to be able to respec your spirit points as the game launches? You know, I guess the underlying issue of this was people were, you know, boosting their spirit, like using their spirit points based on the current meta, which was around rarity farming. And so little bit change of game here where, you know, it'll still be relevant for rarity farming, but some of these people may have not made the best choices based on the current meta, you know, with I can't remember the terms now, HP versus AP, and, you know, all those traits that we mapped out. They might not be the most ideal combos now, even though they may have been advantageous for rarity farming. So what do you what's your take on that, for maybe possibly respecking spirit points?
I mean, I'm good with the overall idea. It's just the timing, how often it can happen. Like, is there any price associated with it? I think that all that needs to be fleshed out before we can actually implement anything and do a real proposal for it.
Yeah, sounds like there's something there, but we have to gather some more data on it. And yeah, just quickly want to touch on a couple more points, I guess. Hardcore's put up a point here, a post, how to make crests more fair and profitable. So that's in reference to the guild crests, and I guess bidding for them with your. Are we still going to be bidding on them with our glitter? Like, can we get a little bit more background on how that's going to work?
Yeah, we haven't been able to focus a lot on that in the last couple weeks. We did actually write out an internal doc around a method that I think I dropped a little bit of discussion about it in a previous hangout, which was having like a leaderboard of in-game alchemica, in-game glitter that was spent, and whoever spent the most glitter in-game would basically be eligible for the glitter, for the guild channeling rewards. This would be guild based, and if you're a member of that guild, any glitter you spend in game would go towards that leaderboard. And there'd be various ways to spend the glitter. Obviously, there's the upgrading method. There would also be things like when you're in your Gotchi lodge, you could spend glitter on adding different furniture, or like adding some special things inside of it, kind of just pimping it out a little bit. And we could have things like we have an entire design doc about public transportation. And so one idea would be the community, the players can kind of build out public transportation where they would prefer to have it. Doesn't have to be something that we would have to build out 100% and just give over. We could build out the mechanics for building public transportation, and then people could decide where they want it. And the districts that have the most active guilds who are giving back the most would end up having like the best public transportation system. So that would be, those are a couple of ways you could use glitter. There's probably a lot more ways. Could be like buying a potion with, going to the shop and buying a potion with it could also add towards it.
Okay.
So I think there was enough pushback on the GBM auction, and people were worried about griefing, that we did come up with this second idea. So I would say the GBM auction, I mean, we're still pretty far away from having guild channeling and gotchi lodges, so we have a little bit of time to iterate on it, but that was our kind of our second idea.
Okay. It sounds like you guys are kind of leaning away from the GBM auction to make things more fair, I guess. Is that spending for glitter going to be more based on individual players spending that are associated with the guild? Or is it going to be more based off the spending the guild is doing itself, like their own glitter?
It would be both. Basically, if you're a member of the guild, then your spending would go towards the guild's allocation, the leaderboard. Because one of the issues that the current GBM model has is, this is kind of a limitation that we had to add, but each guild can only, well, each wearable can only be represented by one guild. Basically, it's one guild, one wearable. And with the leaderboard idea, you could have 3 or 10 guilds, all with the same wearable, all competing for their spot on the leaderboard. So that was kind
Okay.
of a nicer thing. We wouldn't have to worry about one guild like monopolizing one wearable, and then what happens if they lose that wearable? Then their whole kind of guild identity is broken. And so, yeah, you would, if you're a member of that Fireball Guild, any glitter spending you do would go towards the Fireball Guild's leaderboard. And if you're a member of 3 Fireball Guilds, any spending of glitter you do would go to all 3 Fireball Guilds. So the guilds would also be trying to recruit the heavy glitter spenders.
Sorry, could I get a little clarification on that last bit? So if there's 3 fireball guilds, and I'm in one of the guilds but not in the other 2, my spending will go towards, reserving the rights for my guild, even though I'm not in the other 2, to keep that fireball, so long as I guess all 3 guilds are spending. Do
Well,
I get that right?
there's no keeping. Basically, there would be a leaderboard of which guilds are eligible for guild channeling that week. And if you're in like the top 100 or top 250, whatever it comes out to be, then you would be eligible for guild channeling. And the amount, there would be like a kind of a multiplier that would be applied to the highest guild on that leaderboard, like the number 1 spot. So you would take the base rate, you'd take if it's a rare wearable, you would take the base rate times the rare wearable times another modifier that's added on because they are number 1 on the leaderboard. And then when you go all the way down to like number 250, they would actually probably have a negative multiplier, because then they would have like 50%, they would have 0.5 of their base rate. They would actually be earning less because they're lower down on the leaderboard. That would be one way. Or it could just be, if you're under 100, you just get your base rate. You don't get penalized.
Okay, that's very interesting. So there's a strong drive there for competition to be spending actively, to be earning glitter actively, but also, this ties back in with our earlier conversation that there's going to be a strong incentive to earn glitter, and there's going to be a strong incentive to burn glitter because you're going to be using them for so many different use cases
Yeah.
within the ecosystem. And I like this guild. I like that we're moving away from the 3-month auctions because Jared actually makes a good point. I prefer this leaderboard method. The other option with the 3-month glitter auctions is quite stressful for smaller guilds to try and obtain a crest. And I agree
Mhm.
with that. That's something we want to avoid for sure.
Yeah, the
Uh,
interesting part about the leaderboard method is if you're a guild that's like in the lower tier, but you have some members who have been saving up their glitter for a while, you could basically just pick a week and say, all right, guys, everyone spend as much glitter as you can as fast as you can. Because the other aspect of this leaderboard method, which I think carries over from the GBM method we kind of talked about earlier, but that the earlier you spend your glitter, the more value, the more points you would get on the leaderboard. So this would prevent people coming in last minute, within like the last minute, literally, and swooping up the leaderboard. So the earlier you spend it, the more value your glitter would have on that leaderboard. So if you're a new guild, you could come out of nowhere and spend a bunch of glitter all at the same time, like basically the first hour in that week, and your guild would be ranked very highly, and it would be fairly difficult to to like dislodge you from that spot.
See, I like that because it adds a lot of strategy and coordination, and that's what this game is all about, right? At every level, with the whole game, the district, the guilds, there has to be coordination at all those levels, and encouraging that through this mechanic is going to be interesting to see what kind of strategies emerge. You know.
Yeah, so to clarify, Slick says, well, Tamagotchi, so all guilds could channel, just have different rates. So no, not all guilds. There would have to be some cutoff of a score. Basically, we would say there's about 250 wearables out there anyway, so we would probably just put it at 250. Say, okay, only 250 guilds can channel. And you know what? Maybe 10 fireball guilds are in the top 250. So all of those guilds could channel. And maybe there's other guilds that didn't make the threshold and they wouldn't be eligible for channeling that week.
Interesting, very interesting. Yeah, I agree with Quincy too that we could, we can talk about this more in the forums, about the leaderboard, because it has taken a little bit of a different direction in a good way, in my opinion. But yeah, we could definitely, if that's not hasn't been started yet,
Yeah,
we could definitely.
there's no crests. So the crest would not be necessary anymore. It would just be the leaderboard for that week, and uh once the leaderboard is confirmed for that week, in the next week you'd be able to channel based on that one. You'd basically every week you'd be it doesn't have to be a week, it could be a month, whatever the period would be. But once the spending period is over, you get to the channeling period for that would be based on the previous week's numbers, previous week's leaderboard. And during that next week, you're working on spending glitter for the next leaderboard week. So we wouldn't need crests. It would just be a leaderboard mechanic.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. We definitely continue to see what other people's thoughts are on that. Once we, people discuss this in the DAO and get some more feedback on it. And
Yeah,
so,
so time has some feedback here. There's no perfect system, but see, he says this system disincentivizes the organic organization of guilds and forces people to be bandwagon guild members where people are just hoping for the guilds they can channel with. And once you can't channel, people will just leave that guild and go on to the next one. This is horrible for the community building aspect of the game that we've been working on for months now. I don't know if they would leave it. I mean, there's still other benefits to being the guilds. We we don't even have guild channeling right now, and there's a bunch of guilds already. So I don't know if it would necessarily destroy that. But people there, I mean, once you add in this a guild channeling incentive, people are gonna start focusing a little bit more on whether or not their guild is providing Alchemica for them. I think that doesn't matter what system you put in. There's people are always gonna probably just be, there's a certain group of people who will be focusing on how much marginal utility being in a guild will get them. But also it's worth noting that the guilds can choose who they want to be their members as well. Oh, there's a couple of ways. You can either allow anyone to join, you could allow anyone to apply and then you accept them, or you could basically make it an invite only guild where you ask people to join you and they can decide whether or not they want to or not.
And I think there's gonna be a wide variety of criteria for joining guilds. Like we already do have a wide variety. Everything from, like you said, invite only to you got to purchase a membership to be a part of the guild, so you've invested your actual money. Maybe with the scholars they can be a little bit more fickle, but even in there's going to be scholars who are more serious about the game and actually are more loyal to a certain guild, and then you have the ones that will always just kind of bounce around. But I don't know if that's going to be a core, like an issue with core, guild members that join a guild and are actually there for, besides the channeling aspect of it.
Yeah, what you would, as a guild, you would be, if you notice that someone is spending a lot of glitter on their parcel and say they're not a member of any guild, it would behoove you to try to recruit that person. It's a little bit like the curve war, or recently there's been like the chi wars, where there are people giving basically incentives for these big whales to vote on certain incentives for different protocols. And so if you're familiar with that, I mean, that would be part of that system. If you notice that someone is not aligned with any guild and they're spending a lot of glitter, you'd want to have them on your side. But do remember that each Gotchi can only join a certain number of guilds based on their XP level. So that's another thing. The high XP, it's basically giving high XP Gotchis even more utility.
Yeah, and that's a really cool factor to really limit, grow your Gotchi's XP. I think once you get to level 5, you get access to, I think, 3 guilds. So I don't think it could get out of control that way. You're gonna need a really high level Gotchi to be able to do like multiple, like a vast amount of channelings with different guilds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Jared also makes a good point too. Guilds need to recruit landowners and not just renters. Yeah, that's gonna be.
And like I think most guilds would, if you have like a fireball guild, the members of that fireball guild would probably want to join that guild because they're basically creating a monopoly on the fireball. But then you might have another guild that says, oh, why don't we make a couple more fireball guilds, let's have 5 fireball guilds, and all of our glitter benefits will go to all 5 of these fireball guilds. But again, you'd have to have the high XP gotchis being in those guilds. Those high XP gotchis would need to be the ones spending the glitter to really maximize the value.
That's another good point. Yeah, interesting mechanic. I wanna see. Maybe we can see if there's a DAO thread that comes out of this, and
Yeah.
you know,
We have one that
I'd love-
we prepared a while back. We haven't gotten around to putting it out yet, but definitely once the 18th is up, we can put that out. I think I outlined most of the mechanics. So, but yeah, let's sit on it for another week, and then we'll try to get out our initial idea as a DAO thread next week.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, awesome.
I mean, there may be
do
some
you-
things that we're not thinking about, but the only thing I do agree a little bit with time that you might have a little bit more churn in the guilds as if people think they can't like benefit from the guild channeling that week, maybe they'll go and join another guild. So like becomes what is a guild? But I think you're gonna have a lot of guilds that might not want to incentivize that type of behavior.
Yeah, and I think there'll be certain guilds that are able to provide like other valuable experiences outside of just channeling. And so that's kind of another aspect of it. Yeah, okay. So that brought some real good context into that, clarified some of that you know, the issue about making Crest fair and profitable. It's something we can revisit again as, people develop more ideas around it, more feedback around it. There's a couple more stickies here. Do you have time to stick around? I know we're at
I'm gonna have to get off here. I gotta get some
Okay.
rest for tomorrow.
Yeah, fair
A little
enough.
bit
I
under
thought
the
I'd
weather
check in.
today. But yeah,
Yeah.
very good conversation here.
Yeah, it was a very enjoyable conversation. I'm glad we could clarify some things. Yeah, well, I'll keep a closer eye on the DAO forum and, see if I can get some more feedback from myself. Thank you everyone else for joining tonight and contributing to the conversation. Um, I think Notorious BTC, if you're still in there, still here, thank you for providing some background and feedback on your proposal on your forum post. And I
Yeah.
got nothing else. Well, we have Gotchi Space tonight. We might talk about some of this stuff here. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern. And other than that, I don't have anything else, unless you guys do.
All right, guys. Later.
Yeah. Take care, friends. We'll
Cool,
see you again next week.
Alrighty.
cool. Thanks, Hefe. Thanks, Dan.
Of
And
course.
thanks, everyone else.